right, so we're gonna dive into some ideas about reflective supervision in this video lecture. I think with a lot of things in these classes, it definitely starts from having to know who you are professionally, and then also personally. Like, we all have characteristics, personality types that allow us to do certain things much easier than other parts of our job. So knowing who you are personally and professionally, if you are a person who's really going to struggle with the mentorship and the coaching that a lot of programs need, then you might need to set up or find a network that can provide the characteristics that you can't do. If you are more focused on management and supervision, policy writing, advocacy, that's great, but acknowledge your own vulnerability and weakness and set up systems of support for your staff so that they can grow and feel supported within your program as well. So knowing who you are professionally, what are your goals, what do you want your program to be like, but also personally, and what's the interplay between professional and personal, what's the interplay between your personal characteristics, how you learn, how you grow, what you expect from other people, and then professionally, how do you let people know about that, and then also support growth of your team. When we're talking about reflective supervision, though, we're definitely looking at somebody as a supervisor who has the knowledge and professional capabilities necessary to supervise other people. So within our field, it's fairly prescribed in early childhood education. Most of you taking this class because you would like to get your site supervisor permit. We have a certain body of knowledge and professional experience that you need to supervise others when working in early childhood education programs. Reflective supervision is also kind of built on the idea that you've also learned some information about teaching and supervising others, and also that within a supervisory relationship, the teacher wants to engage in reflective supervision with you as well. And this sometimes can be an issue for staff who have never had reflective supervision before. It is not maybe what you would consider a traditional or an old school supervisory role. You know, understanding that you're a person, that you have needs and support, and also helping you in your own teaching practice is not something that I've had in every single job. Maybe it's been a more traditional supervisor employee role. So letting staff know exactly what reflective supervision is, theoretically, like I am now with you, and then also what it means to you as a supervisor and to you within your program, is going to it's going to start you off on a great foot with new employees, or if you're changing into reflective supervision. So if you've had more of a traditional role before and you're now growing your program to embrace coaching and mentorship and some great reflective supervision, you might need to also change some policies and explain to staff how the relationship is going to change as well. Because there are some power and control dynamics. So the more supportive that you want to get, that's fantastic. But you're always going to have some power and control over your employees. If you're signing their checks or involved in any kind of their pay, set their schedules. If you're supervising an adult in any way, you have power and control over that situation that your employees don't have. And acknowledging that power and control and how it might influence your relationship is really, really important. I really love teaching adults about children. That's why I'm teaching at 3 different schools right now. I have a real passion for it. And I really hope to set up reciprocal relationships and learn from my students. I'm always kind of learning, seeing their perspective, hearing from them, hearing from new facets of the field that maybe I was unaware of, or ways that they can do it in their classroom. So I love that. But I do understand that at the end of the day, I have a lot of power and control. I can fail you, I can give you an A, and I know that that kind of sets me up as somewhat of an authority, and I try to have a responsible outlook on our relationship, and that we are not friends. It's a student-teacher relationship, and as warm and friendly as I like it to be, I always need to use the power and control that I have wisely or responsibly, or at least be aware of it and how it might affect students. So I think it's a lot of identifying the hat that you're wearing. So, you could say something if you're having to do both. Some programs don't, you're trying to be a supportive, reflective supervisor, but you're also maybe the site supervisor. So you have a lot of supervisory and management control over our program. So you could say something like, right now, as I'm supporting you and understanding this concept, I'm trying to mentor and support you. We're working through our environmental rating skills together. I'm helping you, I'm teaching you, I'm supporting you. But maybe I'm going to observe you in a few months and I'll let you know at that date. And at that date, I need to see some competence within the environmental rating scale and within your observation in the classroom. And here's a rubric that I'll be using when I'm observing you that supports you in how much competence I need to see and changes that I might want to see in your behavior. So I understand that some of our programs are going to have people that have to fulfill both, but you really need to understand the power, the control, and also the communication barriers that might come with staff. Having them know what hat you're wearing in that moment can be really important. More of reflective, I might say reflective practice or reflective supervision. I use them somewhat interchangeably, although they are different kind of concepts. But it really is the idea of using your self-awareness to then supervise or mentor people and programs. So what it is being able to think critically about the different facets of our programs as well. A lot of it is personnel, so how our staff feel supported, how our staff makes decision-making process, how we can support them to be better teachers. But reflective practice can also be within your operational system. So when your center opens, when it closes, what it looks like, things, policies, procedures, management, and also can be facility, getting a new roof, having to fix the door, needing new materials in the classroom. And then finances kind of touches on everything. We have to be able to pay our employees, we have to be able to fix our fences, we have to be able to have enough for printing costs for handbooks. So the financial aspect touches on all of them as well. A lot of reflective supervision is kind of reframing how you listen, how you ask questions, how you run a program or meeting. So we've kind of touched on some of the things with all learners. So starting your staff meetings on time, keeping them running on time so you don't go over people's time that you're paying them for, having agendas, talking about what we will be learning and supporting all learners. This also can touch on the ideas of being flexible as well. So if you have a lot of different learners, you yourself having to be flexible with how people learn. And we'll go into some more facets of reflective supervision as well. The big part of it is that we're trying to strengthen relationships. So we're trying to kind of get away from, I'm the boss, do it now, or when I say jump, you say how high, and getting more into listening to other adults, especially if you're out of the classroom, listening to their perspectives on the families, how things are running, how things can be changed. They're your boots on the ground. And if they have ideas about change and growth that can happen with children, families, and programs, listening to them can be really, really helpful. In addition to that, even if they're not wanting to make changes and support your growth in that way, they might just need to be heard with what's going on in their classroom. What are some areas that you need support in? Maybe a really challenging parent has come through that's really rude or disrespectful. They're going to need your support in talking to that family. You're probably going to have a meeting with that family if they're really disrespectful. That's not allowed in programs. You can't just come in and be disrespectful to my staff. Maybe children, maybe we've got some special needs and differing abilities that we need to support better in the classroom. We need to get some different intervention strategies going on. Maybe we need to change our classroom setup. What materials do they need? How is lesson planning going? So a lot of that is talking to the staff and not saying, oh, this isn't going well, I'm going to support you in this, but hey, what's going on with you guys? What do you need from me in support? Hopefully there's some overlap on what you're seeing as an issue in the classroom, the teachers are also seeing, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes they need a completely different area so that they can then turn around and support the challenging behaviors that you had identified from the beginning. Maybe you're coming at the same topic, but from different directions. There's also a lot of nonverbal cues whenever we're engaging in communication or relationship building, especially with our staff, and you might need to pick up on it. So if they're not ready for the relationship to change, maybe their previous work experience has always been very traditional, very You say jump, I say how high. And so changing it and being open and vulnerable is not something that they're really comfortable with. So maybe they're not ready for this relationship yet. Maybe they need to think about it and you need to communicate more about it before they can actively engage in it. So if people are standoffish, if their hands are crossed, if they don't go near your office, they wait till you step out so that they can sneak out, you know, those are all kind of telling us that they're feeling a little bit uncomfortable with the relationship shifting, and there needs to be some more open communication and also respecting of their boundaries until hopefully they can get to the place where they want to be supported in the classroom. I think the best and biggest thing about reflective supervision is it's just planning for the future together. Seeing a lot of teamwork within our relationships. So how can we work together now and in the future? So having action plans, having environmental rating scales, using observations, all of the tools that we have for running our centers so that we can really keep our center running together to support our children and families. A lot of the reflective supervision also comes from decision-making skills. So how can you involve staff in decision-making processes? A lot of this is situational leadership. So who are you? What do your staff need from you in this moment? How can you make decisions in different situations with different staff around different decision-making bodies of information? So if we don't treat every child the same, then, and they all need different things from us, then your program and the staff within it all need different things from us as well. So there are some things that you can do, and why should we engage in decision making? A lot of the strengths are that when you are asked your opinion on something and you can weigh in on decisions, you feel more valued and part of the team. They feel that they have some ownership, some autonomy, some control, and that people in management positions, supervisors, site supervisors, program directors, value them and their how they contribute to the team as well. And when people feel valued, they usually raise their level of effort and commitment as well. So if you're having a problem with somebody who's always coming in late, who doesn't seem invested, turning in lesson plans late, maybe not kind of giving their all to your program, or really just not really kind of buying in, a lot of times they need to feel valued or a part of the team, or that they have some decision-making control. When we can do that, even if it's in a nominal way or a small way, hopefully when they feel engaged and part of the process, they'll raise their level of effort and contribution, because now they feel that they have some ownership in the process as well. It's not just a classroom they work in, it's their classroom. They love their classroom. They want their classroom to do well because it's theirs. Staff are also are enabled to make better day-to-day decisions because they have accurate information regarding the direction of the program. So they know the policies and procedures. They know all those little things that maybe a new parent coming into the program, they've seen the handbook, they haven't read it, so they're confused. What's a daily health check? What time do I have to pick up? If I'm late, how much does it cost? You know, instead of saying, oh, go talk to my manager, they can say, oh, I have an answer for that really simple question because I've had that communicated to me. I know the ins and outs of my program, so I can support parents that have questions. Or when a challenging behavior comes up, I know what my role is in that challenging behavior when I need to seek support from other people. We are always going to have to involve our supervisors and our management in a lot of cases, but there are a lot of things that you can handle yourself as well that are kind of smaller questions. And when they feel enabled to do that and they've been communicated with, they can do that, which eventually should hopefully take some burden off of our plate as well, because they feel that they're part of a team and can answer questions. They'll probably feel a stronger bond of responsibility. So not only will they buy in and feel valued and see the classroom as theirs or a team undertaking, but they'll feel some responsibility for the program as a whole too. So lesson planning or, being out in the hallway and seeing, a poster falling down, maybe they'll grab it or they'll let somebody know about it. It won't just be, this isn't my problem. It's not in my classroom or it doesn't affect my kids. But letting other people know about things that are happening outside of just their sphere of influence really speaks to a bigger level of responsibility. A lot of times too, staff that doesn't feel valued or that they have any control over their workplace will engage in some gossiping, some, kind of negative words in a staff room, or going to happy hour after work with your teaching friends and kind of dragging work. You know, everybody needs a release and a valve. Everybody needs a network that they can talk to, like, oh, I can't believe that family, or I really struggle with this kid today. You know, we all need that kind of release from a loved one or somebody close to you who can allow you to kind of vent about situations. That's never going to go away. But I'm talking more of like a chronic case of staff being really unhappy with the situation at hand and maybe taking it outside of their sphere of influence. So talking to other people, spending a lot of energy focusing on the negative. When we can help them feel valued and part of the decision-making process, hopefully they'll look more towards the future and ways that they can help with problem solving and less on blaming the current problems on management or dragging programs or dragging the staff that work there. A lot of times morale and motivation is higher as well, and we've seen some correlations between staff who feel valued and part of a team and less turnover. And anybody who's worked in early childhood education knows we have a very high turnover rate. I can't say that it's not because of, unfortunately, the low pay that's in this field, but a lot of it also is morale and motivation and feeling like you're part of a team. There are some challenges to decision-making or involving staff in decision-making. It does take more time up front to involve staff. So it's much easier to just make a decision from up on high. In my office, I'm writing a policy. This is how it's going to be. It's my word or the highway. It's going to take a lot more time to talk to staff, to go through their classrooms, to have chats with them, to call meetings, to get everybody's input, to take surveys. And it takes trust on our part too, that I'm allowing them to be part of the decision-making process, that they'll make a good moral or ethical decision that aligns with the vision of our program. And maybe it also involves some trust that they're going to step out of themselves, that they're not going to choose, well, we're only going to be open 6 to 12 because nobody wants to work afternoon on Fridays. You know, that's not great for a program. Of course, I don't want to work afternoon on Fridays. You know, it's 3 in the afternoon right now. I'd really like to be done with this video lecture, but it's really important that I finish my lectures so that I have them ready for the semester so that you guys can learn. So sometimes we have to do things that take some trust for our manager to realize that they're going to think beyond, you know, getting off at noon on Friday and look at the value and look at what the program needs. It also might take some forgiveness on the part of the manager too, that sometimes things aren't going to go exactly how a manager wants them, and they need to trust the process and be flexible with it, and also forgive themselves and other people if, you know, things take kind of a hinky turn or kind of go in different paths, meandering past what we really want. The biggest thing is that you have to decide which decisions you can involve your staff in. Which decisions can you not have the group be part of? A lot of them are financial. We have a certain budget that we work with, and a lot of times we have very little control over it. It's coming from our corporate center, it's coming from HR, from our budget department, it's coming from the state, it's coming from the federal government, it's coming from what the parents pay me in income. So asking people, what do you want to be paid? Or who should get raises this year? Or we're going to do a competition for raises, or submit why you should get a raise, or how should we spend our money? A lot of those financial decisions we cannot involve other people in. You know, maybe if you had a little bit of grant money or something like that, and it's going to go towards your garden program, then yes, then you maybe, if you know, I have $500 to support our spring garden this year, what plants should we buy? Yes, they can probably be involved in that kind of financial decision, but not what other people make. They shouldn't know what they make in relation to other people. They probably don't need to know the ins and outs of your insurance or your liability or income or discount rates for siblings. Your budget is incredibly complex. If you are involved in it, need a same budget, you don't want to have to go look at it. It's a very large part of your job. It's a difficult part of your job. And one that you probably engage in with accountants and people of that situation. I'm not saying that you can't do it, but in most programs, typically you do not involve staff in those types of financial decisions. But there are other ways that you can as well. There are things related to operations and to management and supervision that you can open up to your staff as well. So what kind of things, like if you're changing something about a classroom, and if it's a 3-year-old classroom or a preschool classroom, talking to the people where there's going to be a change can be very helpful. Or if there's a problem, you know, playground supervision is always kind of an issue in centers. If it's a problem in a specific playground, talking to those teachers like, hey, kids are falling, kids are getting hurt, the sand's not being swept. What can we do as a team, and what can you guys do, and what do you need to change playground supervision for the best? I know a lot of times we want to just come in and talk about, you know, spheres and you're here and you're there and don't move from your spot and it has to be, the sand has to be swept every 15 minutes. It's very easy to come in and regulate those types of situations, but if they're not actually going to do in the work of actually putting that into practice every day, the policy is less effective. So what are ways, like what are they seeing in the classroom and playground supervision, and why is that an issue? What do they need from you to change it? And then what do they need to do with each other in order to make sure that children are being adequately supervised on the bikes and in the sand and under the slide? So I think this does take kind of an idea about how do you communicate with staff as well. Do you do it verbally? Do you do it with written and signed policies? Hopefully you do it both ways. How can you kind of communicate that you're going to, when are you going to allow them to make decisions? So how are you going to communicate that with them? And then also, what is the ethical and professional changes in the shifts of thinking? So if you're changing how you allow decision making to happen in your program, letting people know I'm engaging in this process where I'd like to have more reciprocal work with you guys. I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to support you. I'd like to know what your focus perspective is on programs so we can make some decisions together. Letting them know, you know, there are some decisions that you won't have a lot of control over, but I want to give you a lot of power and some control over the decisions that we might be making in some of your classrooms. So letting them know that there might be a change coming so that they might be able to feel good about those changes because they'll have a little bit more control. And then also, like, ethically, that's changing the dynamics a little bit. This kind of goes into the idea that there are right and wrong within our workplace, like harassment of other people, harassment of families or children or each other as employees is always wrong. And so you can't, when you're changing programs, or if you're allowing staff to have a little bit more say or decision-making power, you also have to acknowledge that there are ethical right and wrongs happening in the workplace. And if anything is happening that's wrong, like harassment, you have to stop it immediately. Because we have to work, and as a supervisor or as a mentor or as a coach, we have the ultimate responsibility to create these positive environments and make sure that everybody feels safe and protected. And that means that we always interact with others in a really professional and ethical way as well. We have our own kind of ethical code of conduct that supports us and allows us to work with other people. A mentor and a coach will have a different ethical standard than a supervisor. So knowing, once again, what hat you're wearing or what role you play in a specific situation is really, really important, because a mentor and coach can understand and hear more typically than a supervisor can. So if a teacher is talking to their mentor and saying, I'm really struggling with doing this, a mentor and a coach can come at it from a different way. If as a supervisor you're hearing that a teacher is struggling with supervision, that's a huge red flag issue concern. Supervision can never be not done. Children always have to be supervised. You can lose your job if you don't supervise. It's a basic function of our jobs, and why we were hired is to supervise children. So if somebody is struggling with supervision, I want them to have a mentor and coach so that they can explore ways to improve this. But as a supervisor, it's a huge supervisory issue, and one that I will have a different ethical kind of concern with, and that could involve their employment at a place of work. So knowing what role you play, you know, so in a supervision issue, if you're if they're supervising children, you maybe cannot mentor and coach them when it comes to improving supervisory practices for them. You can't sit there as somebody who might be able to terminate their job and talk to them in depth about those types of issues with children, because you need to protect your program. I hope that kind of makes sense. Like there are things that we have to terminate people about that a mentor and coach might hear more about, and they'll have a different ethical perspective, and they'll have a different role that will allow them to support and explore that, because they're not within that kind of management chain of command. You know, if they're a true mentor and a coach isn't going to have that hiring and firing ability that maybe a supervisor is. So there is a separation when it comes to some of those issues. Some things that I think are really important for looking at workplace and power and conflict is knowing that a lot of the power and conflict issues that come about are because of poor communication. So if we allow people to be part of our decision-making process and we're really effective communicators as well, then that will really help them trust you as a supervisor and trust you as a mentor or as a coach. That's why this class has so much writing. Not only is it online, so we're not talking face-to-face, so I need kind of something to grade you on, and it's just kind of built into online learning is weekly work, but also supporting you and being better, more effective written communicators. A lot of times if you can write out your feelings and you can clarify your roles and your positions and your policies, then communicating that with people verbally as well can be supported. If you have it written and then you're doing it verbally, that can support people in understanding and feeling communicated to as well. So a lot of times if they don't understand a new decision, they'll start to distrust their supervisor, they might feel off balance. And you know, you need to communicate things like resources. So a lot of times there's power and conflict with alignment of resources as well. So if you only have a certain budget for materials within a year or facility management or something like that, staff might not see, they might feel that they're being asked to do things and then they're not being supported budgetarily. They're not given the resource in order to do that. Letting people know that you understand that we don't have the budget right now, and what are ways that we can use those parts, or we can write grants, or we can look to our community to support us until we can kind of get our resources back on the ground, and that you're trying, but maybe you haven't gotten your state money, or the federal government was shut down for a while and you know that affected a certain pot of money. Being somewhat honest with some of your financial struggles, not involving them in the process, but letting them know when the money might be coming or that the money is not coming and we're gonna have to think outside the box. That might really happen because a lot of times with power and conflict, especially if you're involving them now into decision making, maybe they've made a decision that involves a monetary responsibility from you. If you can't do that, you need to be fairly honest with them. If they're saying, we would like to change, we want to go away from high scope, you know, if they have some autonomy and control over curriculum, you know, we're not Head Start, we don't want to do high scope anymore curriculum, we want to go project and Reggio. Fantastic, maybe you feel the same way, but making those types of changes typically has a financial cost to it as well. So letting them know in the first year, I can only budget this much money towards curriculum. In the second year, in the third year, what can we do to find some more money? How can we involve people in the Reggio networks that can come out and support us for low cost? What are loose parts that we can find, grants that we can write? Involving them in some of those types of things as well can be really helpful. Then there's just always personal differences, you know, and a lot of times, you know, disliking other people can be part of it. We all have personal characteristics and personalities that maybe don't fit with other people, and that's totally fine. I had a teacher that I worked with years ago who I personally really disliked, and she did not like me very much either. We had a total personality clash. We just really didn't vibe very well together. But she was one of the best teachers I've ever worked with. Top 5 that I've ever worked with in just all areas, everything that she did. And I was her supervisor. So while I didn't want to say hi to her at the holiday party, you know, I always did just to be polite, but she wasn't somebody that I sat down with and I ever wanted to chat with. But in the classroom, I had tremendous respect for her. She actually became one of our mentor teachers, and I learned a lot about the mentor relationship with her because she set that up so well. So personal differences, our values, our actions might be really different from other people, but as long as you can kind of respect and see what they're doing with children or as a supervisor and that it's quality, you typically can start to reflect and understand and maybe even set up a respectful relationship with them as well. A lot of times it's inconsistent or uninformed leadership as well, and especially when you're making the change towards being a reflective supervisor or setting up a network for mentors for your teachers or trying to mentor a little bit as you can, it might be a little bit inconsistent. And letting staff know that this is a process for you as you explore these new supervisory situations in your life can be really, really important. It also just includes those types of things we never want to see from supervisors, such as not handling an issue correctly. Like I talked about parents that were rude in the classroom a couple slides ago. You know, not stepping in and supporting your staff or protecting your staff from rude or disrespectful parents. That's not going to set anybody up for success. And that also kind of allows your power to not be used for your staff. So you have a certain amount of power and control over parents as well. And if you don't use that to support your staff, that can be seen as not creating safe environments. Also, managers who don't understand their subordinates or their job or parts of situations like it as well can lead to some kind of difficult behaviors with staff. Professional standards and behaviors. I think that it's really important to have a professional behavior for yourself and professional behavior that you expect out of your staff as well. It comes out of kind of ideas of ethical conduct. So NIAC, which is a professional organization nationally known that kind of accredits and supports programs that work with young children, has a statement of ethical conduct. I'll make sure that it's up on Canvas for you guys so you can see it. And it's a great place to kind of start with what you expect from other staff. We also have the idea of what is professionalism, what are the core values of our program, and what do we expect to see professionally out of our staff. So that is what your online assignment is for this week, is to have a professional behavior policy. And this would be something that we're reading with our goal or our target audience of being our staff. So if you're thinking of yourself in a supervisory role, and this is ideally for people working in early childhood education, but I think that it has lots of parallels to other fields, and if you need to write it in that way, you can, that you want your staff to read and understand and then communicate to them what your core values for a workplace environment is. So we are all working with each other, so adults working together as coworkers to support children and families. So I would like you to write out at least five, but you can go more if you feel like there are more standards that you want employees to exhibit and why they're important. So you might say that I think that honesty is important in all aspects of our program. Staff being honest with each other and engaging in respectful dialogue is a huge important part of my program because, and then elaborate why honesty is important. Or respect, or politeness, or kindness, or communication. What are the kind of standards that you want your employees to exhibit when they're working together as coworkers, and then also with children and families? These standards are probably what we would do with everybody. What will we expect? I respect children, I respect my coworkers, I respect my boss. This is a policy though, so it's not a procedure. So I just really quickly want to touch on the difference between a policy and a procedure. So a policy would be something like the importance of punctuality. So it's important that all staff honors punctuality as part of their job function within their job. And then you could talk more about why punctuality is important, that this program runs on people getting their breaks and their lunch times at appropriate times, and that within shift work, you need to be out of the classroom in order to refresh and recharge. So it's talking about why punctuality is important. If you're consistently coming in late, this can affect people's lunches, and it can affect people's break times, and it can affect people's work with children. So being punctual is very important. That would be the policy about punctuality. Then I could have a procedure about clocking in on time, or maybe even rules about it. Like, so a rule would be something like you have to clock in no later than 2 minutes after your shift time. Your procedure could be like, how do you actually clock in? When should you be there? When you should be on the floor? Where is the clocking in and out thing? And then some rules about when you actually have to be at a classroom or not within a classroom, or when you'll get breaks, when you'll get lunches. So there could be a whole procedure that's more detailed, that gives more information about how you're punctual. So the policy talks about the larger macro issue of punctuality and why it's important to a program, and the procedure gets a little bit more minute about how you actually achieve the policy by clocking in on time. So this is your online assignment, and I even have an example for you. So you could talk about respect. This would be respect could be one of the 5 characteristics or standards that you want in professional behavior from your staff. We also have the idea of creating motivating workplaces, which I really like as well. So it's kind of your climate. In the first week of this class, I had a reading called A Great Place to Work, kind of talking about climate and wanting to go to work and creating places that people like working. So there's a couple different aspects of creating great workplaces for people. And this is from Paula Bloom, who kind of talks, she writes a lot of management books about organizational climate, but she talks a lot about clarity. So policies and procedures are very clear. They're very consistent. They're applicable to everybody, and they're communicated well and then enforced every day as well. So for families, they always know that there's going to be a daily health check, so they can't sneak in sick kids. They're not even going to bring them in. Why would I try? I know there's a daily health check. Policies and procedures could also include like our online assignment for this week, where you're doing a professional behavior policy on conduct, so that if somebody isn't engaging in respectful dialogue with other people, that there might be consequences for that people. So there's policies and procedures, and everybody knows how they should engage in it. That really helps people feel supported when they know what to expect. Then collegiality, and this is just a lot of the stuff we're talking about, like relationships based on trust and respect of other people. I don't always like all of my teachers, but I respect them as teachers, and I trust that they can make good decisions. If I don't respect and trust my teachers, I've got some serious issues, and I need to really look at my organizational climate. I need to look at why I hired them. I need to look at why I don't trust them. Is it an issue within me, or is it an issue within them that they've showed themselves to be untrustworthy? There's a lot of things that you need to unpack there if you are not feeling like you can trust and respect your teachers. Reflective supervision isn't going to work if you can't respect and trust them. There is a lot that goes into those types of respect and trusting relationships. If you'd like to know more about this, or you have a very specific situation that you're thinking about, feel free to email me, and we can always set up a time to kind of talk through some management situations that you might feel unsure of, or ways to take next steps. A lot of it is goal consensus, so that there's good planning and things get done. So if there's a goal that you're going to raise a certain amount of money, you've made consistent steps to trying to do that. Or if your goal is that you're going to increase enrollment, or your goal is that you're going to get the roof fixed, or you're going to change your curriculum, there's planning that has gone into that, and there are steps being taken towards hitting that goal. It's not just this mindless lip service of, yeah, we totally believe in this, but we don't do anything about it. We just say that we do this, but we don't actually put it into practice. That's where people feel not great about the programs they put their kids in, and then also the programs that they work in. If they join because of a great goal, but then nothing happens, they'll feel really frustrated. And then supervisor support, so that kind of situational leadership, and that reflective supervision that provides encouragement and support for staff as well. And so situational leadership really is looking at a work situation, so in an interaction or something that's happened, and knowing that the guidance and direction that you provide is based on the teacher's personality or the family's personality, the situation that we have at hand, the families that are involved, the children that are involved. So there's a lot of different facets when we're looking at a work situation. We can't go into every situation exactly the same way. It also depends on the amount of social and emotional support a leader provides. Sometimes we as human beings, if we're going through a lot of stuff at home, we need more emotional and social support from our leader or our supervisor or our mentor or coach than we might need at another time in our life. So sometimes we need a lot of social and emotional support, and sometimes we need a lot less. So depending on what your employee needs, hopefully they'll communicate with you what they need, because sometimes you just have to support people a little bit more. And also understanding what the employee is performing. So in a task, a function, or objective, such as supervising a classroom or doing lesson planning, speaking with parents, having good communication with parents, what is the employee exhibiting at that moment? Can they fulfill this task? If the objective is that you have pleasant conversations every single day verbally with each parent, is this employee contributing to that goal? Where are there areas of deficit that they're going to need supported? So typically when you hit a specific situation, the first thing you need to do is diagnose. So like, what's going on here? How many families are involved? Which children are involved? Is there special needs or delays that I need to be aware of? Which teachers were involved? How do my teachers learn? What are their multiple intelligences? What have my past interactions with all of these people been like? So I'm diagnosing and I'm seeing all the facets and characteristics of this situation. Then my second step is to adapt so I'm adjusting my behavior in response to the situation. So typically I have to take a deep breath and I have to, after diagnosing, kind of come up with a couple of steps that I think that I might need to take based on the situation, based on how the parent acts, based on what the parent has had happen to them in the past, based on how I know my staff responds to things. And then I need to communicate in a way, once again, looking at the multiple intelligences, that everybody's going to try to understand to the best of their ability. So how can I communicate this with them so that they might understand it and accept, especially if it's a challenging situation, maybe with a challenging parent? What are some ways that I can support this decision that we've made, or support how I'm helping everybody in a way that they might understand or accept? And then also advance. So go past this situation, especially if it was a negative or a challenging one, and go on to the next challenge and go back to supporting my staff again. I can't really talk about situational leadership unless I'm also talking about cultural competency. So just knowing that a lot of what people need from you in a situation, this is children, families, and our staff, has to do with our culture, our language, our thinking styles, our ethnicity, our sexual orientation, our age, the generation that we grew up, our physical abilities, maybe our gender roles. There's a lot of different puzzle pieces that go into everybody's identity. And when we're working with different identities, which is great, I love diverse programs. We're very diverse in the Southern California area, and we want to support and grow that. But we have to know that with different backgrounds, we might have to be more situational. We might have to look at culture when we're coming together towards a common goal. And so when you're working with cultural competency, a lot of it, and that's why we really prioritize the diversity in education classes that you can take at the community college, is because you do a lot of cultural competence in that class. So you learn about yourself. You learn what your culture, what your background, what your identity is. How do you come towards decision making? How was decision making and supervision and leadership prioritized in your culture? What did it look like? Is it different than other people's? And then exploring other people's cultural norms, their own values, and their beliefs. So having to do this in work as well, and then being able to bridge the two. So if there's a disconnect between what I think leadership is and what another person thinks leadership is, based on their own norms, values, and beliefs coming from a culture, then we might have to come to a compromise. We might have to make some kind of bridges between those two differences, and that can be really difficult. And that's why we have an entire class devoted to this, is to help you make those kinds of consensus decisions and also understand yourself and others. I think just to wrap up this lecture, though, this is just the idea that as supervisors or as professionals who work with children, we are always supporting and caring for families and children. I've never worked with a student at this level who did not think that their primary goal was to support and care for children and families. So if we are that understanding and that we're that inclusive with our families and children, can we be that inclusive and supportive for each other? So can we do that to our coworkers, to our colleagues, to our networks, and to our employees, most importantly? So how can we better support the other adults that we work with? So that's just the kind of last thought that I'd like to leave you with as we're kind of exploring the ideas of engaging in a reflective supervision process. All right, thank you so much. I'll see you guys online.